Okay, welcome to another episode of Glen Yaps. This one might be a little bit longer. Uh, this one is about the good and the bad of playing in bands. And for me, I played in a lot of bands. I've played in ones that I started myself, and I've played in bands that other people have started. There are pros and cons to both. And I would say the cons outweigh the good. It's just one of those deals where my own experiences have been more on the negative side. For me, when I first started, it was basically, high school friends. We all got together. We're all learning our musical instruments, and let's put this together and see how it goes. And from the very get-go, it was a lot of fun. Everybody was learning their craft. Nobody was pro by any means. We're pretty much hackers, and it was strictly fun, killing some time, learning some songs. In my time, it was the Cars and some early AC/DC and Eddie Money and things like that. Real just fun top 40 songs. And I got my first taste of what I call the Yoko Ono effect. The Yoko Ono effect is when a band member wants to bring their girlfriend or in the early days would have been girlfriend, but in later days the wife, into the band circles, what I call it. And what happens is they end up having a voice in the production of the band. In some cases that might work. I have never in 40 years have seen that work. Never. I don't mind having the girlfriends or boyfriends, depending on if it's male or female members of the band, involved in watching the band, enjoying the band, having get-togethers with the band. But the band itself, the working machine, has to stay with the band members themselves. I can't stress that enough. In my years of playing, I have never seen a band work without confrontations when there was interference from outside people. But anyways, in my very first band, we had fun for about a year, and then the one player in there brought his girlfriend to be part of the band, and it just never worked. And it was like a plane crashing. It went so fast. It just brings a different element in that ruined the original chemistry. So at that point, it was like, okay, one failure. We all kind of realized it, and everybody moved on. And I went into it full bore. It's like where the other guys' music was secondary, but for me, I became in love with it. I loved the feel of a band situation at that time, and felt a creative thing that I never felt before. So I just continued on with it. And so over the years, I've started many bands of my own, some all original, some cover band stuff. For me, the fun part is trying to pick a theme or a style of music that would work with an audience, work with the musicians, but be different than the other bands in the local area. So most of the bands I played in that I started myself really played drastically different music, or had a theme that wasn't the norm at the time. For me, that was the main goal. So when I hired guys into the bands that I started, they understood where I was going with this particular theme. Now, in the bands that I started myself, I always made it that whatever the theme was or the style, everyone had an equal say on money. Everyone had an equal say on song choice, and the same with the gigs. We had to agree on what the gigs were, because you don't want to be booking shows where not everybody's agreement on it. You don't want to be playing songs that might have been out of somebody in the band's caliber and make them struggle. Because I've been in that situation where I've struggled learning songs for a band, and it's like, this is like out of my league. So you have to realize the limitations of the guys that are in the band and stuff like that, including yourself. But it comes down to, as long as everybody knows the picture when they're coming in to join the band, things normally work pretty good. Then it comes down to, does someone get an ego? Are they not happy with some other elements of the band? Most of the bands I've let them have pretty good creative freedom. Now, the bad side is I'm a very, I guess would be the word, perfectionist. I'm not as bad as I used to be, but back in the day I was really bad. I wanted it note for note, everything note for note. I wanted the same keys as the original songs. I didn't believe in tuning down. It's like, whatever that song was written in, you had to play it in that key. And for me, it was a fidelity thing. It may have helped the singer tuning down, but it also created issues with the backup singers, because everybody's learning it slightly different, and your vocal range, is now being placed in a different spot from the original recording. So all these things came into factor, and all of them created issues at some point. So the main downside is trying to keep bands together. It's no secret that you've heard the term that's like being married to all these people in the band. So think of it as, maybe if it's a 3-piece or a 4-piece, 5-piece, you're married to all these individual people. There's so much give and take. Now, I failed at a lot of that, because if it was my band and I laid out how I wanted things to go, not so much the song choice and stuff, but the direction of the band. If it was a prog rock, or if it was an all 60s band, a tribute band to something, it's like that was laid out. So you're joining this. You can contribute any music that fits with this theme. You have full choice on what you want to play, as long as it fits the theme. Because it's no use selling yourself as a style of a band or a theme of a band, and you don't follow it. So things would derail when people would get that idea of breaking off from that. And I've always made this suggestion is, why don't we start a side project to cover all your wants and needs, but the band that's been originally laid out and what everybody was hired for, the theme, let's stick to that. Let's do the second thing as a side project. And for some reason that didn't go over with a lot of these musicians. It's like, but you would have the best of what you want, and my theme is covered. So they couldn't see it that way, and thus the bands would never last, that long. Now, obviously that's a problem I have, but as I got older, and I started playing in other people's bands, I found I was in a different situation where, like I was in a couple of bands doing original stuff. Actually, well, more than a couple, but I'll use 2 as examples. I was in a band called Huckster. All great musicians, great people, talented, and we were all in this group and doing original material. We did, got to be 20 to 30 originals. The problem I had was we were all together doing this project, and there was no communication of which way the band was going to go, or whose input was allowed and who basically had no input. It just kind of fell into this dangerous area where the entire band starts to float on one person's direction, whereas myself, I wanted to contribute to the original material also, but it would fall on deaf ears, where there was just no communication. And this happened in a few bands. And the problem I have is when you get hired into these projects, I walked into this particular band saying, this is a side project for me, I have a main band. So you have to communicate what you want. And it never happened. We ended up going to the studio, and even in the studio, the process wasn't laid out. And even when I asked, I couldn't get a straight answer. It was very frustrating. I ended up leaving the band after the recording because I'm a full believer in communication. Communication is easy. There are so many ways to do it. I can use a video like this. I can talk to this person directly. I can talk to the band directly. It just never happened. You could not get a game plan set on what these people wanted to do. It got very frustrating because we all want to contribute to original material. You don't join an all original band if you don't all want to contribute. If you just want to play an instrument, you'd be in a cover band, right? It's the easiest. You have a guideline of the original song, you learn your parts, you go play, you make some money, you have an audience. Originals, not quite the same way. So I was in another band, Wishbone, same problem, the communication, where one guy took full control, and any ideas that you would contribute to it would get slapped around and forgotten. And I used to record the bands all the time during practice sessions, and the thing is, and I used to tape the full sessions, so you could hear where the discussions didn't happen, where the communication just wasn't happening. You could hear me ask a question, can I do this, or what about trying this, and it just would fall on deaf ears. Well, there's only so much you can do when no one wants to listen to what you want to contribute to. And it might just be for one song and one little part. It was never a thing where I wanted to take over the whole song and make it my own, because I write my own songs. I would have just took one of my own songs and said, here. That's not the way it was working. So people give me a lot of heat because I've walked out of bands. They never ask why. The communication there fails again. If you want to know why I've left bands, just ask me, I'll tell you. I've told these people many times, when I'm in the bands, why I leave. And it's up to you to pay attention to why. Even in my old original bands, I've folded them up and I've given the reason, and for whatever reason, it doesn't sink in. So the bad thing that most bands, most relationships have to work on is the conversation part, communication, and it gets frustrating a lot. So in recent years, this is coming into my 40th year of playing, give or take. I started in '77. So I decided to never start my own band again. My last band was a 60s band. We were together 5 years. I hired everybody in the band for the reason to do 60s music. And I stress this, I swear, I stress this. It's on our posters. I've stressed this. And over again, the input is to try and, we should learn stuff outside of the 60s to be more modern. See, and that's the problem. You got hired and came to this band to play 60s music. That was the focus. That was my theme. If you didn't want to do that, then you leave. I'm in the same boat. I've joined bands where, you know, the theme was told to me to be this, and then end up morphing into something else. Not why I started. Not why I joined you. This is what you told me we were doing. If you can't stick to that, you'll have to find somebody else. Some call it prickish. I just call it satisfying the original theme that was mentioned, that was discussed. I don't know why that's so hard for some people. You can play in multiple bands. You can dictate your own schedules for all these bands. I've played in 4 and 5 bands all at the same time, and a lot of them did really well. But as soon as you vary out from the original plan, you're asking for it. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And so I've had it where the musicians felt they needed to move on. They wanted to try other things. They had no issues with the theme that I was shooting for or the band direction. They left because they wanted to experiment with something new. They knew it wasn't going to happen in this particular project or a project I had going. Perfect. They were totally cool, communicated the issue, and it was a good issue. It's like they want to expand in other directions. Perfect. And we can still be friends. But for whatever reason, when the heat starts to build in a band and tempers rise, they forget the original theme that the band was formed on. That's what it always comes down to. Now, I've been in bands where everything worked perfectly for years and years, and it was like amazing. It was like the best ride ever. You're all friends. The music is all what you all want to do. And then the problem comes up, the venues. There's no venues to play, or the venues are thin where there's no room to get your band in there. So you have a band that's been together 3 years and might play 10 times in 3 years. That's a lot of work for nothing. And in that case, you all look at each other and go, well, it was a fun ride, but we can't get in the door of these bars. And as good as we are, and as good as it sounds, and as much as people like us, the bars, they have their own idea and theme of what they want to hear, and you don't fit in. And unfortunately, that's a sad realization, because it's a lot of work for nothing, because you don't realize that all this work is wasted until you're ready to gig with your 4 sets and 5 sets of music, and then you start shopping the product around that the doors are closed on you. Because there is a lot of bands, a lot of competition, and the bars are not going to get rid of some of their best bands just to give you a shot. The only way that happens is if somebody's canceled and they can't find a fill-in. And they go, okay, well, this band here, we'll give them a shot. Now, the other issue I have, which is a downer, is as you get older, people's schedules get really complicated. And you imagine being married and trying to get your kids all on the same schedule to book your holidays. Try doing it with bands. The last few bands I've had, I've literally wanted to scream trying to book the bands and around the schedules. It was just a no-win situation. I had no choice but to throw in the towel, because every force was against you. I had a good band, good bunch of musicians, and we all got along, but their schedules were brutal, and because there are limited bars to play, trying to get the small slot that the bars would open for us to coincide with the schedules of these guys was just mind-wrenching, I guess would be the word. I did it for 5 years, and I finally came to the conclusion to just pull the plug. I just could not handle it anymore. And it came down to a combination of that, the scheduling, and the tug of war to do songs outside of the 60s theme, because the band was strictly a 60s themed band. Now, they all came in with that, knowing that, and believe me, because I'm a 60s music fan, there is enough music to keep you going for the longest time, and people love 60s music. You know, some people don't like 60s music, but a lot of people do. You have to think, there's all different age groups, they're all looking for some place to go that gives them the entertainment that makes them feel young again. And that includes the 60s style. In fact, the 60s music is now catching on with our youth of today. I've seen it at the shows. I mean, when they start singing all the lyrics, and these kids are, 18, 19 years old, you know that they found, something in that music that they can relate to or connect to. But with that band, when they were tugging out of the 60s scene, it's like I kept saying, no, this is the 60s scene. This is the 60s. This is the 60s. How many times do I have to say it? So in 5 years, that was our theme. We dressed as it, and no, they kept wanting to pull in the other way. So I got discouraged. I kept saying, let's just start another band under another name. I don't know why that just does not sink in. It doesn't take any effort to just start another band with another name. Do it as a side project. When this band of the 60s is not working, do the other one. I've come across this so many times in my life. It's baffling to me why that is so hard to comprehend. So you have a scheduling issue, you have a material issue, and you have a availability issue, where either the band's not available to coincide with an available date in the bar, because just conflict and conflict and conflict. And the sad part is the band are all great musicians, and they're totally capable of playing any kind of music. But on this issue, it just drove me nuts. So I said after that band, I will not start any other band of my own ever again. It's just the headaches were too much. And it was like a weight lifted, because I've done it for 40 years. And I was trying to please everybody, along with pleasing myself with the themes or the style of bands that I had in the past. But you make enemies, some you still might remain friends, and it's just a battle of wits. So now for me, the good side is now I'm just a hired gun. I swore to myself, I said no more bands of my own. I don't want any more bullshit. So I'm going to go where they need a drummer. So whatever band calls, I go do a fill-in. And it's like, okay, I'm doing the fill-in for you for this show. Give me the lowdown on the music you're playing. I'll learn, I'll show up, I'll do my job, and then I'm out of there. And the same with the present band I'm in right now. We're all friends, but I'm just a drummer in this band. I don't really have any say in the band. I'm a man on the totem pole. I like that. The discouraging part is I don't get song choice at all. That anybody who's in a band wants to have something they look forward to in music, and a lot of musicians don't like to share that, and I don't know why that is either. But that's something I can overcome because I love playing drums. But it is discouraging when you're in a band situation and you don't get a say on the material. Like you're doing 4 sets of songs, 10, 12 songs a set, and if you don't have one of your own choice in there, it gets discouraging because you know your heart might look forward to playing a song that that you've loved for a long time and want to throw it into the mix. but the others, don't want to do it. So I've come across that more times than I've liked. But in the present band right now, I can live with it because the rest of the band gels perfectly. So that one little thing, I'll swallow the pill on that, and live with it. But the band loves to work. I don't have scheduling issues for the most part. And even if there is a scheduling issue with this band, the musicians, a couple of musicians play other instruments, so if that one's away, one takes over and still does his own job. So it works out great. I love it. And they want to play. So they want to be available to play. So that's another plus. If you're in a band, be available to play. If you're not available to play, don't be in a band. You'll just screw it up for everybody. If you just want to have fun, join a band that doesn't want to play live and just wants to have fun. But if you walk into a band where everybody wants to do gigs and you do not, then take yourself out of the equation. Or at least communicate that I'm in it for this and I can't play this month. I'm open a week in September for part of the day. Let them know that. And then they'll tell you to, okay, thank you, move along. But if you can't lay out your schedule for the other people in the band in a timely manner, you're wasting everybody's time. My last band did that, and other bands, and it's very. I'll say it, it's a waste of time. If you're going to put all your effort into a band and play every single week for a practice, only play 6 gigs a year for 5 years, it's a waste of time. Now, we might all agree on it to try and work it out, but if it gets less and less after the 5 years, it's time to pull the plug. That's what I end up having to do. Now, the other issue is if you're in the all-original band, you have to know that you're writing for a purpose and you want to get out and play the stuff for people. You have to either make your own gigs happen, rent halls, whatever. You have to have a lot of friends and make it work. Bars will not hire, in most cases, an all-original band. In this city, anyways. There are a few bars, but most of them are not into it because, for the obvious reason, you're an unknown entity. You know 25 to 30 originals, and the bar's never heard of them, maybe 3. That's a hard sell. So my issue is the one band I did, I recorded 2 CDs and wrote a 3rd album, which I didn't record but helped create all the parts on it. You couldn't get them out of the basement. You got to play live. If you have an original band, you have to write but get out of the basement. It's stupid to just sit in the basement with a full band of doing originals and not try and do a venue. You can record all the CDs you want. If they can't hear you play, you can't sell it. You can post your stuff online, your songs. You got to bring somebody to your site. If they don't see you, don't know who you are, in a bar, it's a chain reaction. If they see this band live, wow, that's a cool song you wrote. How do I get it? From there, goes to the online, to the download, the money, back to you. It's a simple cycle. And just some bands, 1 gig a year, not happening. If it ain't happening in the suit, you've got to go somewhere else to shop it around. The band, you got to play live. Oh, I can't get that. Excuse me. You can't get that in people's heads. You got to shop the material around. For me, for my own material, I do it just for my own fun, my own love. I don't care if it sells. I don't care if people hear it. It's just for me. I've said that 1,000 times in videos like this. So anyways, the good side of the band situation is if you get with your friends and you're just in it for the fun, just to play the odd gig, have a couple parties in the garage with your wives and a whole bunch of the neighbors, and you have a good time with that. There's no control issues, no control freaks. You will have the best of time being in a band. You know, I've been in those situations. They're fantastic. If you're into an original band, writing material is the most gratifying thing ever for a musician in most cases. And to write songs with other people or even by yourself, there's a fulfillment there that not many other things can match. The thing is to keep your egos in check. You know, it's like to not be too overpowering. I've been guilty of that. I admit it, and basically learned along the way. But what I will not stray away from is the fact that if the band has a certain focus, a certain theme, stick to it. That's what started you. And if you haven't played live more than a couple of times, no use changing that because you really haven't got out of the gates yet. You may as well milk it for a little while and see if it works. If it works, keep adding to it, building it stronger. If it doesn't work, rebuild it. Simple. But the original thing, definitely the most gratifying thing I've been part of. And then if your band gets into recording, that's another fun thing. I suggest, because you're in Sault Ste. Marie, learn to record yourself. Because unless you have big dreams of leaving the Sault, just recording for yourself will save you a lot of money. If you want to go to the studio and let somebody else do it for you, that's fine. But no offense, the products I've heard around the city aren't any better than what you can do in your basement. I know I'm going to get flack for that, but it's the truth. I've done it with studios, I've done it on my own, and I've heard other people's products just from farting around in the basement, and I'm sorry, we're all in the same category. It's never pro studio Los Angeles style. Sorry. You know, you're never going to match with anybody's gear in this city. You're not going to match what the pros have. So you have to be happy with the middle ground. And you know what? We all have this production of the middle ground sound. And hey, that'd be a good recording company. So if you get over that ego thing and get over the spending tons of money to have someone do it for you, do it yourself, have fun learning the process. If you're not into that and you just want someone to control it, and you walk in and play the song and let them push the buttons, that's great too. There are people in town that will charge you lots of money to do it, and you won't have to worry about anything except playing your instrument. That's fine too. I chose to do it all myself, spend time gathering the gear, learning it, and just having fun with it. I know if my stuff, sound-wise, I know for a fact it doesn't sound like the pros, but are you selling the song or are you selling the production? The idea is to sell the song, right? So that's why we write originals. We don't write originals to get the best sound on a shitty song. We try and write the best song we can. And hopefully the sound lives up to the song. But it's the song that counts. So the other good things about bands, some road gigs can be a lot of fun. You get to know people that maybe you only knew at a distance, and I've met a lot of wonderful people in my band days, and you know, I'm still friends with them to this day. Unfortunately, there's the dark side of that where you really learn how people are, and you don't like them after being in a band with them. That's gone both ways. People don't like me after being in bands with me. I don't like being in certain bands with certain people. That's just the way it is. It's human nature. It's like relationships. If we all loved one another, the first band we were ever in would be the first and last band we'd ever be in. I don't know if that makes sense, but so. But if you want to be in a band, I would probably suggest not overthinking it too much at the early stages. Follow a theme, follow a style of music. When I say theme, I mean 60s, you want heavy metal, you want grunge, you want country and western, that's a simplified theme. If you want to play it all, if you want to be a mixed bag of tricks, that's great too, as long as you all agree on it. If you walk in and it's like, well, we're doing, some Slayer, but I'd like to do some country too. You have to understand, the market where you're going to land. I've got Dwight Yoakam and Slayer in the same set. So where's your market? So then how do you sell it? You have to have all these discussions because you're definitely going to shock people. So, but those kind of things. But even if you're starting your own band, hiring the musicians, you have a lot of people come in and audition, and as long as your communication skills are great, unlike mine right now that I'm stuttering, but if your communication skills are great and you can relay what you want the band that you're hiring these people for, what the layout is and which direction you want to go, what are the future plans, the live gigging, that kind of thing. You want to do road work or not? As long as you communicate, you shouldn't have too many issues. But that's a tough thing. I've always run into musicians that don't want to talk. They want you to mind read. Very frustrating trying to read the mind of a musician. Me, you don't have to. I talk steady. You know where I'm coming from. I guess that's why it frustrates people, or it annoys people, is because I speak my mind. But you know where I'm coming from. It's like there's no guesswork. You come down to my basement to jam, and this is the band I'm hiring for. Everyone pick one song. Everybody pick one song per week to learn, and it has to be in this theme. The band is a 60s tribute band, or it's a prog rock band, or it's a dance band. When I say dance band, dance music, everybody pick a dance song to learn. Your choice, but it has to be a dance song. I don't see why that derails all the time, but it does. And it's a simple derailment. So, I don't know, just very puzzling. So for me, it's more frustrating than the good side of it. The good times, though, I cherish them, and I wish they happen more often. But that is not the case in my own experience. But maybe for you it was different. But I look out the musicians I've seen over the last 40 years, and none of them are in the same bands. There's a few that have been together 10 years. I think like maybe 2. Longevity of a band, depending on if you can play or not, is probably a year. If you get to 2 and 3 years, that's good. If you get to 5, that's a miracle. And some of these bands have gone 10 years. They're obviously committed. Now, you don't want to fall into this boat where the music you play is the same songs you learned 10 years ago. And believe me, all bands, including my own, have fallen into that because there's some laziness happening in bands. And you got to keep learning material. There's so much material out there. There's no excuse not to learn material. It doesn't have to be brand new, but it has to be fresh for you. It has to be fresh for your audience. And believe me, the bands around Sault Ste. Marie fall into that category, mine included, where we just sit on our asses and, what the term is, milk them. Milk the songs. The same old tired songs. You know what? That drives me nuts. And I've left bands for that. I've left good bands that played every week for big bucks. I've left them because they didn't learn songs. I'll say it. Southern Guns. Good band, popular. I started that from the remains of another band, and they were lazy and didn't want to learn the stuff. I mean, 1 year we played the same songs, never learning anything. 1 year. It drove me nuts. I signed off on it. It's just not what I want to do. I can sit down here and play the records and recordings, the same ones every day for a year. That is just not me. Maybe it's you, but eventually your audience goes to sleep, and even the present band I'm in, I just want to keep things fresh and adding songs to the list. So, but anyways, that's my babbling rant for today. It's probably like 40 minutes long, so I might have to split it up into parts just so you don't fall asleep while I'm talking. So I appreciate everyone that listens to and watches my rant videos and my other videos that I have online. I love the comments. A lot of people are afraid to comment on my Yaps because I'm very, I guess I'm very intense to a lot of people. So they send me private messages, and that's totally fine. I like to respond to them, and I enjoy reading them. But I do appreciate everybody taking the time to watch my rants. And I will never stop because I love communication, and I may not be the greatest at it, but it's just a kind of a fun side thing that I do outside of music and house rentals and the other stuff that I have occupying my life. Anyways, thanks again for taking the time to watch this video. Peace.